There's Grandma and Grandpa and Mom. Soon to be Grandma and Great-Grandma and Great-Grandpa. Hello. So what do you guys think?
Looks beautiful. Got that guy ought to get arrested for speeding.
Hi, my name is Patrick Barrett, and I'm here today with my grandpa, Charles Boss, and we're going to do a quick video interview. So I've got several questions for you, and thank you for coming here today. The first question I have for you is, just wanted to know a little bit more about all your brothers and sisters and your mom and dad.
Well, my mom and dad, they both come from Holland. And my dad came to the island, and well, they really came to the United States. My dad was 2 years old. He was born in 1880.
Look right here.
And they settled in the Dakotas and starved out there in the Dakotas, and then settled down on the Cowlitz River, down that flows into the Columbia. And they had a couple of bad crops there, and then they moved to Whidbey Island, I think in 1902. And there was a pretty good sized family on my dad's side. And then they farmed, and he lived there on the island all his life until about I'm not sure what year it was. 46, I gathered, right around 1946, and he had a heart attack and passed away. My mother had died several years before that of tuberculosis, and they had 3 kids, I and my brother Willard and my sister Velma, and she died about 1955 in that. And my brother lived to be 83, and he passed away about 2 years ago.
He also went by what name again?
Willard.
Didn't he?
Tone.
Tone.
Tone. He lived right close to your grandma.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, that's about the size of the Boss family, and I'm still stirring around. I'm going to be 88 on my next birthday.
And how did you meet Grandma?
I met her at a dance, at a Grange Hall dance in 46. And we got married about in the same year, late in the year.
Quick courtship, huh?
Beg your pardon?
A quick courtship.
Well, I'd say 3-4 months, wasn't very long.
And when did you give Grandma the ring?
Oh, on her, when she graduated from high school, on the night she graduated from high school. Yeah, and she went to Arlington, she graduated from Arlington High School.
And which school did you graduate from?
Oak Harbor.
Oak Harbor High School.
1933.
What did her parents think of it, you being 10 years older?
I didn't have any parents at that time around anymore.
What about her parents, though?
Well, they thought it was all right because they were of similar circumstances. I think that there was 12 years difference in their marriage. There's 10 in ours.
Wow.
And Grandma was one of how many kids?
Ooh, about 5 or 6. She lost one sister to TB. Oh, maybe 4 or 5 years.
So this is your mother?
Lorraine's sister, or I shouldn't say that would be her aunt. That would be his mother's sister, died of TB in a sanitarium there somewhere in Everett area. A couple of years before we were married, so I didn't never really meet her, but her mom lived to be 80, and her dad, I think, lived to be 83. Her dad was a logger. He followed the logging camps from wherever they were going, just the timber, and he was pretty crippled because he'd been working on a log and they rolled a log on his leg. And he had one leg when it was healed up was about that much shorter than the other one.
Jeez.
And he had came down here from Canada, and he was born in Australia. He was Irish, and I always killed him and told him he was an Aussie. Because he'd come from Australia.
And there's a street named after that.
It's
McGinnis is in Vancouver, Washington.
It's
right?
there yet. I got a picture of this. I was up there 2-3 years ago, and we took a picture of the street sign, McGinnis Street. Her dad had a butcher shop up in North Vancouver.
What kind of work did your dad do?
Everything. Hard work, very hard work. My old dad was a hard worker. You always give him a good day's work for $1, I know that, but he done all kinds of work. He done mostly in construction. He'd help with moving the forms and that type of thing. Did a lot of work for the farmers.
And his name was Christian.
Yeah.
What was his middle name?
Johannes.
Johannes? Christian
Yeah.
Johannes Boss.
That's what mine was when I got my birth certificate, and I took it over. Had to sign an affidavit and had it made it Charles John.
And then your mother passed away when you were really young, right?
Yeah.
How-
She died in 1924, so I was 9.
9 years old.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much raised by your dad. You and
Yeah, he and I batched a lot.
your brother and sister were all
My
raised.
brother, when he was 14, he left home and went to work on tugboats because he just loved boats. And he worked on boats until almost, I'll bet you, for 50 years. And then he finally went to work for Mount Vernon PUD. He was superintendent of that PUD there for a few years.
And that's Tone, right?
That's Tone. Yeah, and his son's now working for PUD.
Todd.
Todd.
And you were married before you met Grandma, right?
Yeah, I married a gal, came to Oak Harbor, taught school. She was 3rd grade school teacher. And big, husky, sweet gal, and a nice gal. And she got cancer.
What kind of cancer?
Died of cancer. Well, it was in her uterus and in her stomach. And she was feeling good. She was always robust, really, but she got that cancer, and boy, that took her right down pretty fast, really.
And how long were you guys married?
Not very darn long, maybe 2-3 years.
Wow. And then tell us a little bit about your working career.
Well, I did a little bit of everything too. I built a few houses, and I built a few buildings. I rented a lot of buildings over the years.
But you started working right out of high school at the fish traps, right?
Yeah, I worked there only a summer or two, but when I got out of high school, I went to Alaska for a summer because there wasn't any work around in the 30s. It was pretty tough going, and I pulled choker behind a caterpillar, and we were building right-of-ways for highways up there. I just stayed one season, and then I came back, and then I built a service station after that. And God, I run that for a long time. My dad and I run it together part of the time. And then when the Navy came into Oak Harbor and took off my property that I had, and I moved to Mount Vernon, my dad ran the station again. And in 1946, he decided we ought to build a new one, so I moved back to the island and we built a new one, and in the process, he passed away. He died of a heart attack. Never had any heart trouble in his life that I know of. And when he passed away, why, I didn't want to stick around there anymore, so I moved back to Mount Vernon, leased the station out, and I lived there another about 4 years maybe. And then I decided I was coming back to the island, and then I built another service station, so I had 2 going then. And I leased that one out too, then didn't run it very long, just got it going. Then I got into, in 53, well, yeah, about 53, 54, 55, I know it was bought into the Ford garage, Ford dealership, and ran that for a couple of years. Couldn't get along with the guy I was doing business with, and I told him one of us had to go, and he wouldn't go, so I got out, and he had to buy me out. after that, why, I built another building or two. And really, I couldn't tell you what I did.
Well, you started a whole slew of fire stations, right?
Well, that was all during the course of all this whole length. I joined the fire department when I was probably a junior in high school. And I was in the fire department until the time that until I moved to Mount Vernon. When I got over there, we had a bad fire and no fire protection, so I organized a fire department there that's known now as the McLean Road Fire Department. And I was chief there for a few years. I think it was 63 we moved back to the island. Anyhow, I was chief of that, and then it was earlier than that, because in '58 I was appointed chief of the Oak Harbor Department after moving back from Mount Vernon. In that process, we organized a fire department. Well, Santa Fuca was organized, and I went over and helped them get the equipment and helped them get it straightened out. And then they started one in Coronet, another district, and I went out and helped them get started. And when we moved out of Oak Harbor out to Crescent Harbor, and they didn't have a fire department, so I helped organize that department and helped them get the equipment and fired it up and trained some of the boys. And in about 1967, I was living out in the country, and I was still chief of the Oak Harbor Fire Department, and I just quit because I was too far from the fire station, for one thing. The boys were beating me to the fires, and I had about all I wanted. I had about 40 years of chasing fires. And after that, I really just kind of done a little bit of building and worked here and there. I didn't really have any particular occupation. I really never worked for anybody to speak of. I always worked for myself.
What was it like living during the Depression?
Damn tough. Jobs were few and far between, and if you did find a job, you didn't get any pay for it, so, it was really tough. And I imagine the island would probably, people lived better than they did in the cities, because we always had big gardens, and when I was a young kid, we always had a cow. We milked a cow for our own milk. We always had plenty to eat. Never ever went hungry. And always had a place to sleep. And so, but it was tough, It was, people were really hurting. So I worked quite a few days for $2 a day. So, you don't get ahead very far.
And having lived that many years, what would you say are the two biggest inventions that kind of hit you hard? I mean, you've lived through cars, televisions, everything.
Television came in about 50 to Whitby, and so we could get television around 1950. And certainly that was a big improvement. I don't know whether it was an improvement or not, but anyhow, that's when it happened, and surely that was one. And of course, cars, when I was in the Ford dealership in 55 and 56, about the highest priced car that we sold was $2,500. And now that won't buy a bum cheap one if you multiplied it by 125,000, you see. I bought a brand new car in 1937. Was a Ford, never been licensed, $675.
What about how much did a house cost back then?
Oh, they sold a lot of houses in about, in the 50s. I can take you and show you a whole edition they built, and they sold for under $1,000, house and lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your fondest memory with you and Grandma?
Oh, God, we had a lot of good times, went to a lot of dances. We caught a 52-pound salmon, and she was along, and she netted it. That was a pretty experience. Ain't too many can have it and say that, But, I don't know, well, I lived on an island, you might say, almost all my life. And it always seems pretty good to come back across that old bridge. Get back on that old rock. It's a pretty good place to live.
And what was the other question I had? Oh yeah. So what do you think about all the great-grandchildren on their way, and the one that's already here?
Well, it's certainly wait a long time and give them to me all in one bunch, you know. These grandkids. I'm happy to everybody see them doing so well. Everybody does much better nowadays than they did when I was young. Kids growing up today don't have any idea what hard times are. They never will, I don't suppose. In them days, if you didn't have a job, the government didn't come along and hand you a free lunch. You had to go out and hunt it. You had to earn it. You say, hey, I'm sorry for you. Here's money for your housing, and here's money for your groceries, and food stamps, and you can get them things in a day.
What's your fondest memory with Patrick?
Oh, I don't know. I took him grouse hunting one time. We had a good time. I enjoyed that. I think he did too.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, God darn, I wish I could still do that. Can't hike the hills no more.
Caught a lot of fish and
Caught a lot of fish.
shot a lot of birds.
Yeah, we made 3 trips to Rivers Inlet. Not Patrick along, but Lorraine and I. And, God, we had some good times. We made a trip from here. We trailered our boat to Wenatchee, trailered it up to Cooley Dam, put it in Cooley, in the Columbia River at Cooley Dam, and run that clear up the Columbia to the Canadian line into trail, and always, well, we were going to go to Revelstoke, but we never got that far because the lake was just plumb full of drift. They had just built a dam at Castlegar, and when they built that dam about 10 feet high, made a lake called Arrow Lakes back there. And when we got in those lakes, you would just dodge and drift with your boat all day long. So after about 2-3 days of that, we turned around and came back. But it was a fun trip. We had 3 boats, and we tied the 3 boats together and just drifted down and sang songs and had a good time. Drank a little beer. It was fun.
What's your best advice to your grandkids?
By God, I think the best advice I can give anybody's kids is when you're working for somebody, that guy don't make no money, you don't have a job. And a lot of people don't feel that way today. They think, oh, I belong to the union and you got to pay me, and the company goes broke, and then there you are. No job. I always figured if a guy paid and gave me a job, I owed him a day's work, and I gave it to him too.
So work hard and you'll prosper.
Well, and I think you got to use a little common sense too. You know, I always figured to treat your neighbor like you'd like to be treated yourself, and be good to everybody. I always got along with people. If you tell them you're going to do something, you do it. And I don't know, the people don't seem to have the responsibility in growing up anymore that they used to have. I don't think the folks give the kids enough responsibility. They got to learn that the world don't owe a living. They got to earn it.
All right. Well, thank
One
you.
more thing. Do you want to give a little message to Grandma here? Okay.
Well, I've had a really good life. I've got a daughter married to Mike Barrett. Got 3 kids that are just exemplary good kids. I don't think you could raise them any better. And I got a daughter in Seattle. It's got a nice family. And if I died tomorrow, I would give a damn. I've had a good time up to now.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us the interview, Grandpa. I appreciate it. And bye.
Yeah.
You guys are both so cute. I don't want to shut it off.
Yeah.
I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced him to my loved one, and while they were dancing, My friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night and the tender